It was a quiet, chilly night in Pine Hollow, Mississippi on October 12, 2023. The kind of night where crickets chirp, leaves rustle, and everyone's tucked in safe and sound. Or that's how it's supposed to be. But at 9:30 p.m., the phone at the 911 dispatch center rang. And when the dispatcher picked it up, they heard a voice that would haunt them forever. It was a young boy. His voice was shaky, scared, and so small. He was barely breathing, like he was running for his life. And then he said 5 words that made the dispatcher's blood run cold. "Help! My mom just shot me." 5 words. That's all it took. 5 little words to turn a quiet night into a screaming, flashing, all-hands-on-deck emergency. The dispatcher didn't have time to think, is this a prank or is this real? Nope. When a kid says his mom shot him, you send help, fast. Sirens blared. Police cars and ambulances screeched out of the station, lights flashing red and blue, painting the dark streets. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Is that poor boy still alive? Why on earth would a mother do that to her own child? And is she going to do it again? This wasn't just a crime. This was a nightmare, and it was happening right now. But to understand how things got this bad, we have to go way back to the very beginning. Back to a sunny day in the summer of 2003, at a little church cookout in that same quiet town of Pine Hollow. Because every big, scary story starts with a tiny, happy one. Back then, Pine Hollow was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. You'd walk down the street and neighbors would wave from their porches. Kids played kickball in the road and nobody locked their doors. It was simple. It was sweet. And at the Little Baptist Church's annual charity cookout, 2 people met who would change each other's lives forever. His name was Nicholas Brown. He was 21, strong, and worked hard fixing cars at his dad's garage. He was the kind of guy who always had a little grease under his fingernails and a big, easy smile. Her name was Melissa Carter. She was just 16, sweet as pie, and helping out at the drink station, pouring lemonade for the church ladies. They didn't fall in love right away, not at all. Nicholas carried a heavy table over to her station, set it down with a grunt, and said, "Looks like you've got the busiest spot here." Melissa laughed, handed him a cold cup of lemonade, and said, "I'm just doing what they told me. Keep everybody hydrated." That was it, just a simple hello. But something clicked. They talked a little more that day, about music, about the church softball game, about nothing and everything. It wasn't romance, she was too young, but they liked talking to each other. It felt easy. For the next 2 years, they kept bumping into each other, at church events, at the garage when Melissa's dad brought the car in for an oil change. Nicholas would always ask her about school, and she'd always tease him about his greasy hands. It was sweet. It was innocent. Then, in the summer of 2005, Melissa turned 18. She was all grown up, working at the local bank, counting money and smiling at customers. And that's when things changed. They started meeting for coffee after church. They'd walk around the county fair, eating cotton candy and laughing. And then, one night, Nicholas took her to a little diner off Highway 8. They ate fried catfish and cornbread, and they talked about their dreams. Melissa said she wanted a big, happy family someday. Nicholas grinned and said, "Well, I want that too, but only if I find the right woman to have it with." Wink, wink. By that fall, they were boyfriend and girlfriend, holding hands in the church pews, singing in the choir together. Everyone in town saw them and thought, "Aw, what a cute couple." And then, in March 2006, Nicholas got serious. After choir practice one night, he asked Melissa to meet him in the church sanctuary. It was quiet and dark, except for the soft, flickering light of the candles up front. Nicholas pulled a little box out of his pocket. Inside was a simple gold ring. He looked her right in the eyes and said, "I've prayed about this, Melissa. You're the one I want to build a life with. Will you marry me?" Melissa didn't even hesitate. Yes! The pastor, who was still in his office, heard the happy news and came out to give them a big hug and a special prayer. It was perfect. They got married in April 2006, right there in the same church where they'd met. Melissa wore a beautiful white dress her aunt made, and Nicholas wore a sharp blue suit. The whole town came to the wedding. There was music, there was dancing, there was so much food you could smell it for blocks. It was the happiest day of their lives. For a while, everything was golden. Nicholas worked hard at the garage, fixing cars and earning a good name for being honest. Melissa worked at the bank, remembering everyone's names and their kids' birthdays. They prayed together every night. They sang in the choir every Sunday. They helped out with church projects. To everyone in Pine Hollow, they were the perfect couple. Strong, faithful, happy. They even started their family. In late 2007, Melissa found out she was pregnant. She told Nicholas by giving him a little box with a pair of tiny baby socks inside. Nicholas's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "You mean we're gonna have one of our own?" he asked. Melissa nodded, and he pulled her into a huge hug. "I'm gonna take care of both of you," he promised. "You won't have to worry about a thing." Their first baby boy, Elliot, was born in March 2008. He was healthy, chubby, and had a full head of dark hair. Nicholas carried him into church the next Sunday like he was the king of the world. Everyone oohed and awed and gave them baby blankets and gift cards. Melissa was a natural mom. She kept the house spotless, cooked yummy meals, and made sure Elliot was always clean and happy. Nicholas worked even harder, saying to his buddies, "Everything I do now is for my boy and for Melissa." Life was good. Then, 6 years later, in 2014, Melissa got pregnant again. Their second son, Eric, was born that December. He was tiny but strong. Nicholas held him in the hospital and whispered, "2 boys. I must be doing something right." Big brother Elliot was so proud, he introduced Eric to all his Sunday school friends. And then, in 2018, surprise! Melissa was pregnant again. Their third son, Ethan, was born that year. He was their smallest baby yet, but just as healthy. By then, Melissa was a full-time mom, juggling 3 little boys, church events, and keeping the house running like a well-oiled machine. Neighbors would say, "Those Brown boys are so well-behaved, and Melissa's got it all together." From the outside, the Brown family was picture perfect. A handsome dad, a beautiful mom, 3 cute kids, a nice house, and a strong faith. It looked like a postcard. But looks can be so deceiving. You see, having 3 kids is hard. Really, really hard. Nicholas was working longer and longer hours at the garage, trying to pay for everything. Melissa was home all day, every day, changing diapers, making lunches, driving to soccer practice, and folding mountains of laundry. She was tired, so tired. And slowly, without anyone noticing, things started to crack. Nicholas stopped saying sweet things like, "You look pretty today." He stopped smiling when she walked into the room. Instead, he'd sigh if the dishes weren't done or roll his eyes if she was too tired to watch TV with him at night. Melissa noticed, but she told herself, "This is just marriage. Every couple goes through rough patches." But it wasn't just a rough patch. It was a sinkhole. Nicholas started coming home later and later from work. At first, Melissa thought, "Oh, the garage must be busy." But then he'd come home smelling like a weird, strong cologne, not his usual smell. And one day, while folding his shirts, Melissa found something that made her heart stop. a faint red smudge, lipstick, on the inside of his collar. Her stomach dropped. She showed it to him. "What's this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Nicholas just laughed it off. "Oh, probably from leaning over to help Mrs. Harris at the garage. You know how she wears too much lipstick?" Melissa wanted to believe him. She really did. So she let it go. But a little seed of doubt was planted in her heart, and that seed started to grow. By early 2020, that little seed had turned into a giant thorny bush. Nicholas's phone was always face down on the table. He got annoyed whenever Melissa asked, "How was your day?" He was distant, cold, like a stranger living in her house. Then, one Sunday after church, a friend named Linda pulled Melissa aside. Linda looked really nervous. She handed Melissa a folded-up piece of paper. "I think you should see this," Linda whispered, "before everyone else does." Melissa opened the paper, and there it was, a photo. Grainy but clear enough. It showed Nicholas, standing outside a hotel in Jackson, kissing another woman. But it wasn't just any woman. It was Patricia. Patricia wasn't just someone from church. She was Melissa's best friend. The woman who had eaten dinner at their table. The woman who had babysat Elliot, Eric, and Ethan. The woman who had prayed with Melissa when she was sad. Melissa felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. She couldn't breathe. That night, after the kids were asleep, Melissa waited for Nicholas to come home. She held the photo in her hand, her heart pounding like a drum. When he walked in, she looked him right in the eye and asked, "Is there something you need to tell me?" Nicholas looked at the photo. Then he looked at Melissa. And for the first time ever, he didn't lie. He didn't make excuses. He just said it. "Melissa," he said, his voice flat and cold, "you're not the same anymore. You're not juicy like you used to be. You're not attractive to me. And you can't make me feel like a man." Those words, they were like knives stabbing Melissa right in the heart. She just stood there, frozen, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't even speak. That next day, Melissa did something brave. She called Patricia. The phone rang twice, and then Patricia answered, all cheerful, "Hey, girl!" Melissa didn't mess around. "I saw the picture," she said, her voice shaking. "Stay away from my husband." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Patricia spoke, and what she said was even worse. "I'm sorry, girl, but he wouldn't leave me alone. And besides, he says you don't satisfy him anymore. Look, I promise we'll never get married, but how about I satisfy him? At least it's better than some stranger." And then, click. Patricia hung up. Melissa sat at her kitchen table, the phone still in her hand, feeling like her whole world had just exploded. The man she loved, the friend she trusted, they had both betrayed her. The family she built, the faith she held onto, it was all crumbling to dust. Something inside Melissa broke that day. Something dark and heavy took its place. She didn't know it yet, but that broken piece was going to lead her down a path that was darker than anyone in Pine Hollow could have ever imagined.
Now, let's talk about Elliot. By 2021, Elliot was 13 years old. He was tall, strong, and an amazing basketball player for Pine Hollow Middle School. Everyone said he was going to play in college someday. He was a good kid, responsible. He helped his mom with his little brothers, Eric and Ethan. He did his homework without being asked. He even did chores around the house, like loading the dishwasher or folding laundry, just to make his mom's life a little easier. Elliot had no idea what was going on between his mom and dad. Yeah, he knew they argued sometimes, but he figured that's just what married people do. He never heard the bad stuff. He never saw the photo. He never heard Patricia's cruel words. To Elliot, his parents were just tired, busy, stressed out, normal. He loved his family, He dreamed of playing college ball. He joked with his mom to make her laugh. Life was good, simple, straightforward. He had no clue that a huge, scary storm was brewing right under his roof. He was standing right in the middle of it, but he was in the calm, quiet eye. He didn't know that soon, very soon, he'd be forced to do something no 13-year-old should ever have to do, fight to save his own life. Fast forward to late August 2023. Nicholas told Melissa he was going on a fishing trip with friends for the weekend. He packed a cooler, tossed it in his truck, and drove off without even asking if anyone needed anything. Melissa watched his taillights disappear down the road. She felt nothing, no sadness, just relief. For 2 whole nights, she wouldn't have to listen to his cold words or his heavy sighs. But that relief didn't last. It was quickly replaced by a deep, aching loneliness, and Melissa knew exactly how to numb that feeling. That night, after the boys were in bed, Eric and Ethan asleep after a movie, Elliot was in his room doing homework. Melissa pulled out a half-empty bottle of whiskey from the back of a cabinet. She poured herself a glass, then another, and another. The sharp burn in her throat didn't bother her anymore. It just made the pain in her heart feel fuzzy. She thought about the girl she used to be, the happy, hopeful girl who married Nicholas in that little church, the proud mom who held her baby boys for the first time. And then she thought about the woman she was now, invisible, unloved, broken. She scrolled through old photos on her phone, pictures of her and Nicholas smiling on their wedding day, pictures of her and Patricia back when they were best friends. Each photo felt like a punch in the gut. She started talking out loud, to no one. I gave him everything. And for what? For him to make me feel like nothing? Her words were loud, her thoughts were messy. And then she heard stepfoots. It was Elliot. He came into the kitchen to get a glass of water. When he saw his mom sitting there surrounded by empty glasses, he froze. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice full of worry. Melissa let out a weird laugh. "I'm fine, baby. Just thinking too much. Sit with me for a minute."
Elliot hesitated, but he pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. He'd seen his mom sad before, but this was different. Her eyes were glassy. Her words were slow and strange. She started talking about the past, about how proud she was when he was born, about how she always put the family first. "You were the one who made me feel like I was worth something, Elliot," she said, her voice cracking. "You're the only one who's still here for me." Elliot shifted in his seat. "I'm here, Mom. You know that." The room felt heavy, too quiet. And then something terrible happened. Something that should never, ever happen. Melissa, lost in a fog of alcohol and pain and loneliness, did something unthinkable. Something that crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Elliot was frozen, confused, scared. He didn't understand what was happening until it was over. He didn't say a word. He just got up, walked back to his room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of his bed, shaking. In the days that followed, no one talked about it, not a single word. Melissa acted like nothing happened. She made breakfast, she helped with homework, she went to church on Sunday and sang in the choir like always. Elliot stayed quiet too. He kept to himself. He told himself, just don't think about it. Pretend it didn't happen. But pretending doesn't make things go away. It just makes them worse. That night in August had set a terrible, dangerous clock ticking, and no one knew when it was going to stop. A few weeks later, in mid-September, Melissa started feeling weird, really tired, really sick in the mornings. At first, she thought it was just stress, too much coffee, not enough sleep. But then one morning, she was leaning over the bathroom sink, feeling like she was going to throw up, and a horrible thought popped into her head. No, she whispered to herself. It can't be. But deep down, she knew. She drove to the pharmacy, bought a pregnancy test, and locked herself in the bathroom. She followed the instructions, set the test on the sink, and stepped back, holding her breath. The minutes felt like hours. Her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. And then she looked. 2 lines. Bold, clear, unmistakable. She was pregnant. And there was no way this baby was Nicholas's. The last time he'd even touched her like that was months and months ago. Melissa sank onto the toilet, the little plastic stick still in her hand. Oh, God, she whispered. What have I done? She felt like the walls were closing in. This baby, it was proof. Proof of that terrible night with Elliot. Proof of a secret so big, so awful, that if anyone found out, it would destroy her, her family, her life, everything. She couldn't let that happen. She couldn't. So, while the boys were at school and Nicholas was at work, Melissa sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, and she started searching. Countries with no extradition to the U.S. How to get a passport quickly. Cost of living in Costa Rica. Flights to Costa Rica. She was planning an escape, a way to run away and start over, far, far away from Pine Hollow. She started hiding money, little bits of cash from the grocery money, under a stack of old papers in the hall closet. Every dollar was a step closer to freedom. But in Melissa's mind, there was one big problem, one giant, impossible obstacle standing in her way. If she ran away, people would talk. People would ask questions. And there were 3 people who knew the truth. 3 people who could ruin everything. Nicholas. He'd know the baby wasn't his. Eric and Ethan. They were little, but they saw things. They heard things. And Elliot, he knew the whole terrible truth. In Melissa's broken, desperate mind, there was only one way to make sure her secret stayed buried. Only one way to make sure no one could ever tell her story. She had to make sure they disappeared. It sounds crazy, right? Unthinkable. But that's where her mind went. She told herself it was to protect the baby, to protect herself. But really, it was about fear. Pure, blinding fear. And so the plan began to form. Dark, cold, final. On October 12, 2023, in the quiet town of Pine Hollow, Mississippi, a nightmare unfolded behind closed doors. It started like any other Thursday, cool air, homework, bedtime. But by 9:30 p.m., Melissa Brown moved like a ghost through her own home, her mind made up. Hidden behind Christmas decorations was a .38 revolver, her husband's secret gun. She knew where the key was. She didn't shake. She didn't cry. First, she shot Nicholas as he slept on the couch. 1 shot. No warning. Then she walked to 9-year-old Eric's room. He never woke up. Next, 5-year-old Ethan, hugging his dinosaur. She tucked his blanket, then pulled the trigger. Only one person was left. Elliot, her 13-year-old son, doing homework in his room. She hesitated at his door, remembering his laugh, his kindness, but she opened it anyway. "Mom, what's going on?" Elliot asked. She didn't answer. She aimed for his heart. Bang! The bullet missed, barely. It hit his side. He crashed to the floor, gasping, bleeding. Melissa thought he was dead. She closed his door gently, like tucking him in. But Elliot wasn't dead.
With everything he had, he dragged himself to the phone. Blood on his hands, vision fading. He dialed 3 numbers. 911, what's your emergency? Help, my mom just shot me. The dispatcher stayed on the line. Help was coming. Sirens screamed through the night. Police burst in. Paramedics saved Elliot. They found Nicholas, Eric, Ethan, all gone. Melissa? She was already running. Her debit card pinged at a gas station. Her phone led police towards Jackson. Then the FBI found her ticket, one way, to Costa Rica. Memphis Airport, Gate 27. She sat there, calm, suitcase beside her, until plainclothes officers surrounded her. Melissa Brown, you're under arrest. No fight, no tears, just silence. At trial, Elliot walked into the courtroom. Alive. The whole town gasped. Melissa turned white. From the stand, Elliot told everything. Then he looked right at her and said, "You erased our family. I'll live with that forever." Guilty. 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 2 life sentences, plus 10 years. Months later, in prison, Melissa gave birth to a baby girl, held her for 1 minute, then taken away. Foster care. But Elliot? He's fighting to adopt her. He said, "She's my family. I won't let her grow up alone." Pine Hollow will never be the same. Porches feel emptier. Parents hug tighter. Teachers watch closer. Because the truth is, the signs were there. The sadness, the anger, the silence. But no one stepped in. No one asked, "Are you okay?" So here's the lesson. If you see someone hurting, don't look away. Ask, help, listen. Because sometimes kindness is the only thing standing between a quiet town and a tragedy no one saw coming. Sleep tight, and please be someone's light.